Solar Our Schools is a campaign that Australian Parents for Climate Action started a few weeks ago, where we're asking, so this is in the context of the economic stimulus that the government is focused on and creating jobs, given the situation we're in with the COVID shutdown. So we see a huge opportunity in investing in solar panels and batteries for all public and not-for-profit schools and early childhood centres, so childcares, kindergartens, preschools, plus means-tested grants for private schools and private early childhood centres as well. So now is, the perfect time if they're wanting to create jobs. Solar jobs are all over the country, so they're distributed because schools are in every single community of Australia. So it's a perfect way to create many, many jobs across the country. But of course, as Heidi talked about, it's a win-win-win in that we've got, it'll be supporting Australia to shift to clean energy and cutting our emissions by a large program such as this. Oops, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. There we go. Okay, so this is what Heidi went through. So we're based on the research that the Million Jobs Plan came up with. There are significant benefits. Particularly, we're very excited about the savings that schools can benefit from, because as you all know that childcares, kinders and schools all could do with more money for resources, for staff, for teachers, for classrooms, for books. And so that's the huge benefit here, in addition to the environmental benefits and the jobs that would be created. And I'll just mention a program that you're probably familiar with. When the GFC happened, the federal government at the time invested in the Buildings Education Revolution. And that program was around investing in school buildings for schools across Australia. So heaps of, assembly halls and science room labs and all of those things were built. And I'm sure you've all seen the signs proudly boasting, this is a Buildings Education Revolution. So this is a very similar idea in that it would be distributed across all of the schools across Australia, creating jobs everywhere. Okay, so coming to the question somebody asked earlier around state versus federal support for solar in schools. So the state governments are responsible for state education, so state primary schools and secondary schools. They're not responsible for private schools, they're not responsible for childcare centres or preschools, kinders, playgroups, etc. So the federal government funds education, and then a chunk of that goes to the state government, who are responsible for state schools. But so essentially we're saying that all of these schools, whether they're private or not private, whether they're childcare or preschools, need to have solar, and so the federal government needs to fund it as a large package. So for the state schools, that money might go to the state government to roll it out across the state schools. But for private schools, kinders, childcares, etc., that's not how it works. So we think a federal grants program would be the simplest, where any of those schools or centres could apply for money from the federal government. But there are different ways you can cut it. But the fact is, the money needs to come from the federal government as an economic stimulus. That's what we're pushing for. There are state programs that exist. Queensland's probably, and the ACT is leading the way. Queensland are pretty close behind, in that they have funded all schools have solar. Only a few of them have batteries though. In Queensland, nearly all state schools have or are getting solar, but the Queensland program does not cover childcare or preschools, and it doesn't cover private schools at all. And private schools, there are many private schools that already have solar, and they're the wealthy ones that have the money, and it's a no-brainer to get solar as an investment. So many private schools have done it, but the smaller private schools that don't have very much money, of which there are plenty of them, they can't afford it, and so many of them don't have solar. I know that my daughter's at an independent school. It's a tiny little school, and they could never afford solar, or they're struggling to pay for the basics. So there are many private schools that could do with support as well. And finally, if it's streamlined and easy for schools, this is what we need, because schools, there's not really spare staff members at schools waiting to sit around to apply for grants and work out the complexity of VPPs and solar. It's incredibly complicated, and there's just not usually resources to do this. Okay, quick case study for you. So there are many great case studies across the country. I just picked out one that happens to be quite close to me. I'm down here in Victoria. So this is the Fynes Park Primary School, which is in Geelong. And they benefited from a grant from the state government in this case. And they installed just last year a 94 kilowatt system. It was a $150,000 grant, so it's a substantial grant, which is very, very hard to come by, I must say. State schools, when they get grants, 10, 20 grand if you're lucky, usually. So this was a massive grant by state school standards. And so with that money, they also installed 2 Tesla Powerwall batteries. So they're reasonably small batteries, as I understand it. And they are going to be saving, and already on track to save, $10,000 to $15,000 a year on their bills, which is going directly into the school to pay for more, teaching and sports equipment and books and so forth. So they, in terms of having the battery, there are actually quite surprisingly, there are quite a lot of energy demands in the evening and nighttime in schools. And on the weekend. So that's what they're finding that the battery is really useful for. But this is, a setup that could potentially be connected to a VPP, as Linda was describing. Okay, and so finally, I just want to tell you about the campaign. Some of you are already involved. We'd love as many people as possible to get behind this campaign. So essentially, we have an open letter to the Prime Minister, which is on our website now. You just sign the open letter, and I think we've hit 3,000 signatures last night. So we're wanting to get thousands of people signing up. So we will be sending this letter to the Prime Minister soon. So the way we're getting out there is to spread the campaign through the parent and the community, basically. So everyone whether it's through a childcare or a kinder or a school, ask them to sign on to the open letter and share it with their friends. And it doesn't have to be parents. Everybody absolutely is welcome to sign on and get involved. And we also have a number of people who've signed up to be champions as part of our campaign. So Maddie, do you want to wave, Maddie? Maddie is our lead community organiser, and she has got this amazing team of champions who are rolling this out through their communities in all parts of Australia. And so they're talking to parents, they're talking to the PNCs, the principals, teachers, everyone at their school. And then also we're supporting some of these champions to meet with their MPs. So we're starting to contact our local politicians and ask them to get behind the campaign. And we're also doing quite a lot of media coverage and have other allies who are helping promote the campaign. So if you would like to get more involved, probably the easiest way is to go to our website. That's the link to volunteer if you'd like to be a champion, and Maddie can sort you out and get you involved. And likewise, the open letter is on our website there if you haven't already signed it.